Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie from StoryADay here with the podcast. It's been a little bit of time since I was here with you on the podcast because I've been doing lots and lots of live stuff on YouTube. I've been turning those into reels and YouTube shorts and doing kind of daily-ish update on how the StoryADay May challenge is going. So if you're not subscribed over at YouTube, come and subscribe at StoryADay on YouTube. And you'll see all playlists of all of those updates. So you can see how it's going for me running the challenge. You can see a series called the 15 Lessons or Lessons from 15 Years of StoryADay is there as well. But I wanted to come back and not neglect you, my podcasterinos, because this is my first love as a media format is just you and me chatting into the microphone. Yes, I do video it and put it up on YouTube as well sometimes, but really, I love the fact that you can just hop into your car, plug your phone in, and listen as you're running around your daily business and thinking about writing even when you're away from your desk. So how is StoryADay May going? Are you participating? Are you one of the 500 plus people who have signed up to get daily prompts? It's a smaller percentage of the people who hang around here at StoryADay because the timing's not right for everyone every year, or maybe they've proved what they needed to prove for the first year they did it and now they're just here for the other goodness that's around. But if you're participating, if you're one of those 500 plus people, hooray. If you are one of those people who started and fell off a little bit, don't worry, I have some words of encouragement for you. First of all, come over to the site and have a look at the comments that people are making every day when they write. It's so encouraging and it's so interesting to see how people are approaching each of the different prompts, how they're approaching the challenges with writing, how they're tackling things like family obligations, which are cutting into their writing time, or travel, or how they're using that in their writing. And none of these is the way to be a writer, of course. None of these is the one true way, the only thing to do. And it's so great to get all of these ideas and perspectives from other writers on how they're making this work, how they're making it fit into their lives. Loving that. And if you're one of the people who has opted in to get the StoryADay Challenge Handbook upgrade, I'm going to be contacting you to ask you about that because I've been hearing such great feedback from people and it was so fun for me to do because what I'm doing with the handbook is I'm providing the prompts as usual, which you can get at the site. Every day I've provided a customized warm-up exercise, which helps you to just tap into your emotions around an issue for 5 minutes, maybe a memory, maybe a sense memory of something that you did, which will be related to the prompt, but isn't specifically about how you're going to write that day. And then there's a second exercise, which is another 5-minute exercise, where I ask you a bunch of questions related to the day's writing prompt, which is proving, I'm going to say for myself, it's proving really fruitful. Even though I made these up and you think I wouldn't need them, every day when I open up the prompts, I'm like, what day is it today? What are we doing today? Okay, good. And then the brainstorming questions are really designed to help you start thinking about the story instead of staring at a blank screen. So we'll ask you questions if the story is about a particular type of character or a particular type of situation. I might ask you questions like, what two opposing types of characters might you play with today? What kind of tone do you want your story to have today? What kind of ending are you looking for today? How do you want readers to feel on the way out of the story? Or it might be specifics. One of the prompts early on was about a ticket booth, and the brainstorming exercise, part of it was list every type of ticket booth you can think of. And just doing that gets the creative juices flowing. So people have been really enjoying the upgraded version of the challenge. And if you haven't looked at that yet, you can find it at storyaday.org/challenge-handbook. I got to stop putting hyphens in my links. But yeah, it's storyaday.org/challenge-handbook. And during May, it's $31. So it's $1 a day. It's going up after that. But you can use these 31 prompts, and I'm going to be adding more to them actually as a secret bonus, which I haven't told people yet. I'm going to be adding more to them so that you will have 3, even if you choose to just open this handbook every month, you'll have enough prompts and lessons and warm-ups and brainstorming exercises in there to open it up 3 times a month for an entire year and always see something new, with time to have at least 1 week off every month, because I don't actually think you should be writing a story a day every day of the year, as you probably know if you've been here for any length of time at all. So what have all the prompts been? And let's dig into the experience of going through StoryADay May, because it's not just this year's, especially, it's not just write a story today, write a story today, write a story today, write a story today. I'm actually taking you through a journey of short story writing. And in week 1, all of the prompts were designed to get you to your desk, get you a quick win, and get you out again. There were things in there like telling a story in 5 sentences, limiting your story to 2 characters, writing a 100-word story, setting a timer for 40 minutes and breaking down your story in that time, writing about somebody like yourself, writing to a word list, and writing a title longer than the story, which is a really fun one and ridiculous. And people had a lot of fun with that one. There was a lot of happiness that day. Week 2, which we are in right now, as I record this, we're in week 2. And this week, I'm taking you through all of the elements of the fiction craft and allowing you to focus on one every day. So I'm not just asking you to write a story a day. I'm asking you to work on a specific skill today within the context of writing a satisfying first draft of a story. On day 1 of week 2, we talked about character, because character is the heart of the story. On day 2 of week 2, we talked about conflict, because conflict drives the plot. Many of us are good at writing nice words, and then we struggle a little bit with what's going to happen in our stories. And conflict is a sort of, it's a complicated word, because immediately we think about negative things when we think about conflict, but conflict is about friction. And so I talk about that. And in the handbook version, I give the warm-up and brainstorming for that day was particularly fruitful for people, I think, both in terms of thinking about different types of conflict and in terms of thinking about what that looks like as we observe as readers. The next 3 days of week 2 are about beginnings, middles, and ends. So each day will focus, the lesson will be about how to do those things well and why they sometimes don't work out. And the prompt will be about implementing that in your stories each day. So we'll focus on end, and then we'll focus on the middle. And these will be for either the same or different stories, up to you, but the really focusing on that aspect and ways to fix those aspects of the stories, which is a skill that will carry forward beyond this month. So if you haven't been writing a story a day because you think, I don't want to write a story a day, come to the site and look, especially this week in week 2, where I'm digging in every day to a specific craft issue that you're going to need, whether you're writing short stories or novels or creative nonfiction. Every single day this week, we're looking at that part of the craft. After we do beginnings, middles, and ends, we're going to be looking at point of view, what character voice you're going to write in, and we're going to be looking at descriptive writing versus action, that old sauce show and tell, which is something we talk about a lot because you have to master it. So next week, the week 3 of the challenge, is also really a fun week for those of us who love short stories, because this is where I've called the week the art of the short story. So we're going to move on from focusing so much on techniques of writing, of craft elements of the writing. I still want you to be thinking about those things and implementing them. But what we're going to focus on in week 3 is the shape of short stories, those weird and wonderful ways that short stories can exist in the world, that they are not mini novels. You'll know if you've been here before that I tend to like weird and wonderful stories like flash fiction. If you don't know what flash fiction is, you're going to get a little lesson on that this next week. I like stories made up of lists. I like stories made up of letters. I like stories that are puzzles. I'm not promising that anything in particular is coming up next week. You'll have to tune in and see. But next week will definitely be the diving into the wonderful world of short stories and all the possibilities that they offer that aren't necessarily available if you're trying to write a whole novel. Now, I was on a podcast this week that was not this podcast. It was a podcast called I Wish I'd Known Then. And Sarah and Jamie, who run that podcast, are indie authors who write novels. And we talked about short stories and the challenge that they can be for people who are natural novelists. Like they're not particularly interested in short fiction. Once they start writing, the story seems to grow into a novel. And we talked about how short stories, being able to write short stories, is a skill that's actually super useful because, especially for indie authors, if they're writing a lot of novels. But each novel is a big project. And then you send it to someone and they're like, I read it in a day, or I read it in 2 hours. And all that work that you've put in for the past few months is done. Having something to offer your readers in between times is awesome. And so I think I converted them into at least being willing to try flash fiction, because I introduced them to the idea of flash fiction, which they were a little hazy on, which is reasonable because it's a relatively new term and a relatively new form the last 30 years. And these ideas always take a while to filter out into the wider. There's people who are obsessed with them, and then they filter out into the wider. And I bet you if you walked down the street and asked the first 10 people you met if they'd heard of flash fiction, they would look at you like you were crazy. Especially if you live in a town where people don't talk to each other. But never mind that. I think I convinced Jamie and Sarah that it might be worth trying flash fiction. Week 3 of this challenge is a week where I dig into all of the short and punchy benefits that come with really short fiction. And even if you're only listening to this because you like my accent and you have no interest in writing short fictions because being an epic novelist, give it a try. Come over to the site, have a look at some of the stuff we're playing with this week and next week. And this week will be particularly useful for you if you're writing novels. But next week will be particularly useful for you even if you think you don't love short stories. I have had many people who tell me they don't want to write short stories and then end up having fun with these, especially the types of prompts I'm talking about in week 3. So from the 15th to the 21st, I will be talking about weird little short story forms over at StoryADay, and I hope you'll come over. If you want to jump in for one day of the challenge, do it next week, or do it this week. But you could do it one day a week. You can jump in and look at these and then come back and join the discussion in the comments. We had a discussion within the Superstars group recently about artists' sketchbooks and how visual artists are constantly just sketching. And they'll show those sketches to people and there's no expectation for them to be fully formed works of art. And and apparently, I was told, they will play games with each other. They'll pass their sketchbooks around and they'll add on to each other's work, or there's still a lot of play, which I think is very helpful as someone who's trying to be creative. I've written up on my whiteboard there a couple of months ago, more fun, because without fun, if we're not having fun, and it's not always going to be fun, but without having any fun in our writing, we can get really bogged down and forget why we're doing this. This challenge is intended to be a fun sandbox where you're just playing. But one of the benefits of it is getting into the comments after you've written every day and sharing what was easy for you, what was hard for you, what approach you took, what false starts you had, what dead ends you went down, and just like discussing with the other people who are participating. That's super useful. It's more useful really than sharing your stories. Some people are sharing their stories. Everybody's busy, so I don't know how many people are actually reading those stories. And there's reasons not to share your stories, because if you ever want to get them published, then if you've already shared them on your blog or in my comments, then you are pre-published, right? So you're not going to be able to get somebody else to publish that for you, usually. Also, people are busy, and if you post a story and don't get feedback on it, it can be a little demoralizing. But when you post a story and ask other writers to read it, it's an ask, right? You're saying, please give me your time and give me your comments on my story. If you post a comment that says, wow, I wrote today and I went down this sort of wrong path, but while I was wandering down this wrong path in my story, I discovered a voice that I really thought was interesting, and I came up with a story about a character who's a turtle, and I wrote his story today, and wow, how much fun was that? And I just skipped away from my desk feeling happy. Those kinds of comments are super useful at the blog because they encourage other people in your community to celebrate their weird little false starts and to have courage to try anything and then come back and laugh about what went wrong and what went right. And you're really providing a service to the other people in the community when you do that, which of course makes people like you. And then, of course, they're going to pay more attention when they see your name in a publication or in a prize. They're going to buy the copy they're going to comment on your story that's published on a website somewhere, And editors are going to notice that you bring a posse with you. You bring a crew and you get more eyeballs on their publication. And all of these things are how the world works. The network effect is real. And if you are a pleasant person to be around, then you will gather a crew of pleasant people in your wake who are rooting for you and sharing opportunities with you and supporting your opportunities. I went to a book signing last week where the author had she's not local, but she had a local crew of fans who came to her last book signing. And because she was so pleasant, she was really nervous, but because she was so pleasant and answered all their questions and wrote books that they liked, they all turned out on a Tuesday night to see her again, much to her surprise and delight. So writing, solitary act, but being a writer can't. We are part of a community. Readers, writers, editors, publishing industry, professionals. And a great way to get started, finding that community, engaging with that community, is to do things like write a story a day and then come and share your artist notebook comments about how the writing went. It's a generous act to share your blurts and your false starts and your, oh my goodness, this went so well today, you can do it too, which of course you always feel like cheering other people on when it's gone well for you. And sometimes somebody will write, wow, that day went terribly and I wrote 3 sentences, called it a story and moved on. And that can be exactly what somebody needs to hear on any given day. So I encourage you to come to the blog, read people's comments, comment on their comments, and start building that network of people who you can have as a crew. So that's what I have for you today. If you are not subscribed to StoryADay channel at YouTube, I'm going to encourage you to do that. I'm also reposting stuff at StoryADay May on Instagram. So if you like watching little reels of me imparting tidbits less than a minute long, then follow me there and share, because I just see people having so much fun with this and revitalizing their energy for writing. And every year I forget how inspiring watching everybody participate in this challenge is. During the winter, when I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's so much work and I have to do all this work, and I forget just how gleeful I'm going to be in May when I watch everyone and I join you all in writing these stories. We just put this huge creative bubble of energy out into the world, and it's one fantabulosity that we're generating. And go and check out that interview I did with Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We talked about indie publishing and my history in that world, going back to 1998. We talked about, which I don't talk about that much here, so you might be surprised to some of you that I have a history there. We talked about why novelists should write short stories, and I think I converted them maybe to try it, maybe. We talked about what to do with when you get stuck in your writing. And we really, because it was great, because digging into that with people who are writing a lot of novels and putting them out and taking control of them and putting them out themselves was really interesting, because there was no fluff. There was no like, what should people do in theory if they're writing and they get stuck? These were writers who faced this and who are putting out products. So I'm a huge fan of the publishing industry, but I'm also a huge fan of the indie publishing industry, because it allows people to take control of their output and their ability to get their writing to readers. And it's not easy. And it's a very collaborative community, which I also love. So it was a really fun conversation. And I think we dug into some stuff that will be interesting to those of you who are looking for an opportunity, who are pondering the indie publishing route, because you will get a chance to hear people who are straightforward about the fact that it's work, it's a lot of work, but also who are excited by the ability to take their own work and take control over how it gets out into the world. I think that pursuing traditional publishing can feel a little demoralizing sometimes, and knowing that really there are options for you can be invigorating. And whether you investigate it and decide it's not for you, or investigate it and decide it is for you, listening to other people talking about it can just give you a sense of possibility for your work, and it can give you the spur you need to finish that project that you're working on, because maybe you put it out yourself and maybe you'll manage to find an audience for it, and maybe that'll inspire you to write the next one, or to try something in a different genre because that one you didn't really love writing it, or you didn't land with an audience, or this is what people do in product marketing all the time. They try stuff. You can write one novel and polish it for the rest of your life and be Harper Lee. But doesn't it sound much more fun to write all the novels that you want to write, all the stories that are in your head, and get them out there? If you're feeling discouraged by the traditional publishing model, have a listen to Wish I'd Known Then, the podcast. There's 200 and something episodes, and they usually interview people who are in the trenches with them, publishing novels and running courses and all kinds of stuff, but mostly people who are actually really doing this. None of it's theoretical. It was a fun podcast, and I hope you enjoy my contribution to their oeuvre. Anyway, that is what I have for you this week. I want you to come to Story a Day and browse through the prompts that I've already put up. If you're having difficulty getting to your desk, browse the week 1 prompts. If you are interested in craft issues, if you're like, I feel like I don't have a handle on character, I don't have a handle on plot, go to day 11 or 12 and look at those 10 or 11 or 12 and look at those prompts. If you have problems with beginnings, middles and ends, stick with us this week because we'll be looking at those. Point of view and description are coming up later this week. And then next week, as I say, we're getting into all of the goodness that is short story weirdness. Week 4, coming up after that, 22nd to the 28th, will be what I call Rescue Week. And this is the week where I've used up a lot of your ideas and I've encouraged you to focus on different things every week. In week 4, I'm giving you prompts that are going to launch you into a story every day. And they're going to be low risk, and they're going to be ones that usually give you something to start with that will lower the stakes for you. So different from week 1, which was about limits, week 4 is about, again, having a lot of fun and a little bit of stealing from other artists and things like that. Week 5 is only 3 days, and it's all about celebrating you and what you have learned in this challenge. If you are participating or not participating in Story a Day, come to the site anyway. Cheer on the people who are, have a look at the prompts that might help you commit to writing 1 story this month, and listen to that podcast that I mentioned that will be in the show notes. And that's it. I'm starting to repeat myself now, so I'm going to go because I've got a story to write today. I hope you'll be writing too. Keep writing. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week, and of course, keep writing.